Welcome to Smart Wealth with Joshua.
Your daily stock analysis and catalyst talk. Today we're looking at CoreWeave.
If you find our talks useful, please consider subscribe, like, and comment underneath to support our podcast. And if there's any stock you want us to look into, leave it in the comments section below.
So let's get into the analysis.
We've got a lot to unpack here, and it's clear right away this isn't just, another cloud company.
Not at all. We're really talking about the plumbing, the absolute bedrock that powers this whole AI boom.
And it all seems to center on one thing, a massive shortage of compute power.
That's the whole story, really. CoreWeave is just perfectly placed to benefit from what you could almost call an AI compute crisis.
A crisis, that's a strong word.
Well, think about it. The global demand for this specialized infrastructure is it's off the charts. We're talking about a funding gap between what's needed and what's available of, $500 to $800 billion a year.
Oh, okay, so it's a massive shortage economy.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And they're selling the shovels in a gold rush.
Right, but when I hear AI infrastructure, my first thought is just, GPUs. So why can't the big guys, Amazon, Google, Microsoft, just buy more NVIDIA chips and squeeze them out?
And that's the perfect question, because it gets to their real competitive advantage. And it's something surprisingly physical.
Physical?
Yeah. The real bottleneck in the market isn't really the GPUs anymore. The problem is the buildings, the power data center shells, and crucially, the delays in getting them connected to the power grid.
Hold on, so you're saying their moat is concrete and power lines? That seems almost too simple.
It's simple to say, but it's incredibly difficult to execute at scale. Getting a data center built and hooking it up to the grid, that can take years. 18 to 36 months in some places.
That's an eternity in the tech world.
It is. And CoreWeave has just proven they can solve that physical problem faster than most. And that's why their financials look, pretty incredible.
Let's get into those financials because the growth numbers are they jump right off the page.
For Q3 2025, revenue was about $1.4 billion. That's up 134% year over year.
And the guidance for the full year is even crazier. They're projecting something like $5.1 billion, which is 174% growth?
That's the midpoint, yeah. And for an infrastructure company, it suggests they're completely dominating a new market.
But the number that really stopped me, the one that tells the real story, is the backlog.
Oh, absolutely. The revenue backlog.
Yeah.
As of Q3, it stood at $55.6 billion.
That's $55 billion. That's almost unheard of.
It is. It gives them years of visibility. And to make it more concrete, they expect to realize about $22.4 billion of that within the next 2 years alone.
I have to ask, though, $55 billion is a massive number. How solid are those contracts? Can a big customer just walk away?
That's the key. These are generally multi-year, what they call take-or-pay contracts.
Meaning the customer has to pay for the capacity whether they use it or not.
Exactly. It has to be that way because CoreWeave needs those commitments to get the financing to actually build the data centers. The demand is so high, cancellation risk is pretty low. They need this capacity desperately.
So the demand is locked in. Okay, let's talk margins then.
No.
Because hypergrowth usually means burning cash, right?
Usually, yes. But that is not what's happening here. The unit economics are just incredibly strong.
So what are we talking about?
Adjusted EBITDA was $838 million in Q3 with a 61% margin.
61%. How does that compare to, say, Amazon Web Services? It feels like that's a mature company margin, not a growth stage margin.
And that's the point. It is comparable to the big, mature hyperscalers. They're achieving it now during this massive build-out because they're so specialized.
Right. They're not running, random e-commerce sites. It's all high-value AI workloads.
Every single GPU is optimized for maximum revenue. No wasted overhead.
Which brings us to what you called the CapEx paradox. Because if you look at their GAAP numbers, they're unprofitable, they're burning cash.
Deeply negative free cash flow, yeah. They spent almost $2 billion on CapEx in Q3 alone.
For a new investor, that has to look terrifying. So why is this actually a good thing?
It's strategic. They're investing ahead of the revenue they know is coming. They have $55 billion in contracts. The negative cash flow is just the cost of building the infrastructure to service those contracts.
They're essentially buying an asset that's already pre-sold.
That's a perfect way to put it.
Wow.
And it's why they can finance it with debt instead of just diluting shareholders into oblivion.
Let's talk about that debt. It's substantial, around $18.8 billion.
It is, but the credit markets are clearly getting more comfortable with it. You can see it in their refinancing deals.
How so?
Well, they've secured new debt at lower costs. For example, some new tranches are priced at SOFR plus 425. That's a big improvement.
Okay, so for listeners not in the debt world, what does SOFR plus 425 actually tell us? Why is that drop significant?
It's a direct measure of risk. The plus 425 is the risk premium lenders are charging. When that number comes down, it means the banks see the debt as safer. They believe the backlog will cover the payments.
So it's a big vote of confidence from the market.
A huge vote of confidence.
And speaking of financing, they also did that big $2.25 billion convertible note offering, and they used something called capped calls.
Yes, this is a really smart, disciplined move.
So break that down for us. What is a capped call, and why does it matter to shareholders?
So a convertible note can, turn into company stock if the price goes up. That's a risk for dilution.
Right, more shares out there means your piece of the pie gets smaller.
Exactly. A cap call is basically an insurance policy the company buys. It puts a ceiling, a cap, on how high the stock has to go before conversion. It limits the number of new shares.
So they get the cheap financing, but they protect current shareholders from massive dilution. That's pretty savvy.
Very savvy. It all comes back to that specialization. They are laser-focused on AI workloads.
And that deep partnership with NVIDIA seems critical. They're deploying the latest and greatest, like the GB300 NBL72 systems.
And that matters because those systems are monsters. They're liquid-cooled, incredibly dense, and purpose-built for the biggest AI models.
So a standard cloud provider can't just drop those into their existing data centers.
Not easily. CoreWeave's entire infrastructure is designed around these systems. That gives them a massive performance and cost advantage for their customers.
And those customers are locked in with huge contracts. We're talking a $22.4 billion deal with OpenAI, a $14.2 billion amendment with Meta.
These are foundational deals. And what's more, the quality of the customer base is getting even better. 60% of that huge backlog is now with investment-grade customers.
And who are we talking about there? Not just AI startups.
No, we're talking about Microsoft, major banks like Mizuho, even government agencies like NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory. That makes the backlog feel like a fortress.
And they're not just sitting still, they're pushing into new areas, right? Like that partnership with Runway.
Yes, the AI video generation company. That's a huge compute-hungry market. It's a great proof point.
Plus, the public sector. They launched CoreWeave Federal to go after government contracts.
That's a $20 billion a year market. It offers a lot of stability outside of the commercial AI race.
Okay. We've laid out a very, very strong bull case. The growth, the moat, the margins. But now we have to talk about the stock's volatility.
The elephant in the room.
That 32% collapse in November. What on earth happened?
In a word, execution. The primary risk here has always been their ability to execute on this massive build-out.
And that risk became very real. It was a reduction in their 2025 guidance, right?
Exactly. They lowered revenue and CapEx guidance because of delays from their third-party data center suppliers. The powered shell bottleneck we talked about. It hit their suppliers.
So it's crucial to point out that this wasn't a demand problem.
Not at all. In fact, they've had to turn away customers. They have more demand than they can handle. The problem is they just can't build the capacity fast enough.
So the argument is that the revenue isn't lost, it just gets pushed into early 2026.
That's management's position. It's a timing issue. And to fix it, they're now investing in their own self-build capacity in places like New Jersey and Pennsylvania.
Taking control of their own destiny, so to speak.
But that wasn't the only thing that spooked the market, was it? There was the leverage and then some insider selling.
Right. The CSO, the CFO, they sold shares in the mid-70s right before the drop. Optically, that looks really bad.
It looks terrible. But the context matters. These were reportedly pre-planned 10b5-1 sales.
Okay, explain what a 10b5-1 plan is and why that changes the story.
It's a pre-scheduled trading plan. Insiders set it up months in advance to sell a certain number of shares at a certain time or price. It's designed to avoid accusations of trading on inside information.
So the narrative shifts from panic selling before bad news to routine, planned diversification.
Exactly. The timing was awful, no doubt. But it probably wasn't a reaction to the guidance cut.
That context is really important. So all this volatility, it seems like it's created a real opportunity.
I think so. You've got a valuation dislocation. The stock's trading at, what, around 8.4 times 2025 estimated revenue?
For a company growing at 174% with a $55 billion backlog, that multiple feels really low.
It is low. The market is pricing in the execution risk and pretty much ignoring the contracted revenue. It's created a really interesting asymmetric opportunity.
Asymmetric how?
Well, the downside seems cushioned by that massive backlog. That's your floor. But the upside, if they solve these delays and get execution back on track, is huge.
So what are the key things for investors to watch for in the next quarter?
It's all about Q4 earnings, probably late January. The market will be laser focused on one thing. Have they solved the data center delays?
So any sign that capacity is coming online, that the delays are behind them?
Could cause a significant rereading of the stock. And beyond that, look for more customer announcements like the Runway deal and maybe some M&A.
Right, they tried to buy Core Scientific, so any move to acquire more data center capacity would be a huge catalyst.
It would address their biggest risk head on.
So the thesis here is pretty clear. The recent hit to the stock was about temporary timing issues, not a fundamental problem with demand or their business model. And that sets up a potentially powerful recovery once execution stabilizes.
That's our analysis for today. And it really leaves you with a bigger question, doesn't it? If the entire AI revolution is being held back by physical things like power grids and concrete buildings, how much longer can this software boom outrun the constraints of the real world?
Something to think about. We appreciate you joining us for this look at CoreWeave. Remember to subscribe, like, and share to stay ahead of the curve in the world of smart wealth.